My name's KARRA, and welcome to my home studio. Today, I'm sharing the best Mac computers, spec recommendations, and accessories for music and video creators. I've been using Mac computers for everything in my career since my very first recordings in 2006 on GarageBand on a school computer. But that's a story for another day. I've rounded up my 2 favorite MacBook Pros and my 2 favorite desktops to share my personal recommendations, my favorite features, and the pros and cons that come with each device. And at the end of this video, I'm gonna reveal which Mac I would choose if I had to pick one for all of my work. Over the past year, I've been lucky enough to use these Mac computers to write some of my favorite new music, edit my best music videos yet, level up my YouTube channel's quality and consistency, and manage the massive amounts of files that come along with music and video work. The apps I use every day include Logic Pro, Ableton, and Pro Tools for music, plus Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, and CapCut for video, and of course a few Photoshop projects in the mix. But whether you use multiple apps like me, or just a single software, the most important aspect of any Mac you choose is the specs. So let's break it down. There's 3 components that you get to customize when you buy a Mac: the processor, the RAM, and the storage. These all do something different technically, but they all work together to give you a faster user experience. First, let's answer the big question. What's the difference between Apple's processors? Apple names their processors with the letter M, followed by a number that reflects which generation it's from, starting with M1, released around 2020, followed by M2, M3, then M4, which was released in late 2024. Then they separate each generation of processors into 3 different options. Adding the word Pro becomes more powerful, Max adds more power, and Ultra represents the flagship top-of-the-line processor chip. Okay, so that explains the name, but what exactly do they do? They determine how quickly your Mac can run applications and calculate stuff behind the scenes while you're working. Upgrading your processor helps you do more, go faster, multitask, and saves you time exporting projects. My personal recommendation is the M4 Max chip if you're trying to push the boundaries and get the best of the best. My favorite budget option would be the M1 Max, because it still performs incredibly well in 2025 and can be found refurbished for a great price. If you want a similar amount of power to the M1 Max, but packaged in a tiny desktop computer, the M4 Pro chip is also an excellent choice if you're on a budget. If you make music, a faster processor means you can apply more effects to audio, run templates full of plugins with less latency, and use lower buffer size settings like 32, which seems like something unfathomable just 6 to 7 years ago. But it's truly a game changer today. Or if you produce videos, you can work with higher quality cameras, smoothly edit multicams, render videos quicker, and of course, go crazier than ever with video effects, motion tracking, beauty filters, and more. Do not skimp on your processing power if your career depends on creative apps and deadlines. If you're just making music for fun, you might not benefit from an expensive processor. But if you have strict deadlines and need efficiency, it's an easy choice for me to upgrade to the best processor I can afford. Next, let's discuss how much storage do you need. Another term for storage is SSD, or hard drive space. This is where all of your apps, projects, personal files, and plugins accumulate. If you produce music, I would recommend 1 terabyte of storage for your Mac. If you produce videos, 2 to 4 terabytes would be a safer minimum. I personally prefer 4 terabyte SSDs, which is what I have in all of my computers, except for the Mac Mini. You can only have 1 terabyte SSD, but I still make it work. Music makers generally have it extremely easy when it comes to file sizes. Video producers, on the other hand, are usually dealing with insane file sizes. For example, one YouTube studio session video on my channel produces an average of 1.5 terabytes of raw footage to edit and store, while the song that's being made on camera is just 1 tiny gigabyte project folder. So basically, choose an amount of storage that proportionally meets your needs, and that leaves you room to grow. Regardless of which storage size you choose, always keep an external backup drive with all of your personal projects and files in case your Mac were ever to get lost or stolen. It doesn't matter if you use Time Machine or manually copy and paste your stuff. Just keep a backup to avoid disasters. I store the projects I'm actively working on to these external SanDisk SSDs, then dump my finished work onto my Synology NAS, which has almost 100 terabytes of long-term storage that I can access wirelessly from any Mac in my studio. If you want to see an entire video about my music and video storage workflow, I'll include the link below. Finally, let's talk about RAM. This is a gray area where some situations really benefit from upgrading your RAM, while others not so much. RAM stands for Random Access Memory, which is kind of like short-term storage. To put it simply, the RAM is storing the current project that you're working on, while your SSD is storing all of the other projects that you're not working on. And if it's a project I'm done working on, I'll move it to an external backup drive. Things that heavily use your RAM include virtual instruments with large audio libraries like Contact or East-West Sounds, projects with lots of audio on the timeline, projects with lots of sampler instruments, and of course, video editing projects with lots of footage. My minimum recommendation for music production is 32 gigabytes. My minimum recommendation for video production is 48 gigabytes. If you don't use huge virtual instruments or samples much, you can probably squeeze by with 16 gigabytes. 48 gigabytes is plenty, and going beyond 64 gigabytes usually becomes more RAM than you'll ever actually need or feel the benefits of. So that's my breakdown of specs and recommendations when purchasing a Mac for your home studio. Next, you gotta decide whether a desktop or a laptop Mac is right for you. To answer this, you need to ask yourself 3 important questions. How often do I plan on traveling? How much important work am I going to be doing on the road? And do my destinations have studio equipment? Or do I need to be a completely mobile studio? If traveling is an important aspect of your career, then obviously the MacBook Pro is going to be the path for you. It includes its own screen, webcam, speaker system, keyboard, mouse, and battery to work literally anywhere. Plus, when you're home, it can be folded shut and used like a desktop computer. After, you connect a few of my favorite Apple accessories, which we'll talk about later. It's versatile, powerful, reliable, and widely compatible with studio gear. The MacBook Pro is truly the best laptop that you can buy for music and video-related work. It gets you the best of both worlds, the power of a desktop with the portability of a mobile device. It includes a headphone jack, HDMI output, magnetic charger, and 3 Thunderbolt ports. The display on these laptops is so good, I can confidently color all of my videos and get great results on any device. So basically, if 3 Thunderbolt ports is all you need in your studio, the MacBook Pro is an excellent and easy choice over the desktop. I prefer the 16-inch MacBook Pro over the 14-inch because it gives me more space for my video and music apps. But I know a lot of people prefer the smaller weight of the 14-inch, so that's really a personal preference. I would go for the M4 Max MacBook Pro if you want the fastest available option today, or M1 or M2 Max if you want to get the best laptop for your budget. But if you want to take your speed and connectivity to the next level, then maybe one of these Mac desktops is a worthy investment for your home studio. Imagine you took all that budget that goes into the Retina display, the battery, the webcam, the nice speakers, trackpad, and keyboard, and you funneled it entirely into better specs and more ports. Well, that's exactly what you get when you upgrade to a Mac desktop. I use this M4 Max Mac Studio and this M4 Pro Mac Mini, and they're both amazing for music and video production. Not only are these Macs significantly more affordable, but they're more powerful, offer more ports, and feature more robust ventilation to help maintain that peak performance. And speaking of performance, these Macs are insanely fast and powerful. The Mac Mini M4 Pro is about the same amount of power you get in the M1 Max MacBook Pro. The M4 Max Mac Studio is easily the fastest computer out of this group. It's getting to a point where it's extremely hard to hit the CPU limits in my music or video production projects. And having 5+ Thunderbolt and USB-C ports make it effortless to keep everything in my studio connected at the same time. Last but not least, I want to talk about my favorite accessories for Mac. These are essential items on my desk, whether I'm using a MacBook Pro, a Mac Mini, or the Mac Studio. This is the full-size wireless Apple keyboard. It's sold separately, but it's definitely worth the price. My workflow uses these extra buttons very heavily for music and video production. When I'm using the smaller laptop keyboard, I simply can't work as fast or efficiently. I also really like the old-fashioned USB hardwire version. The keys are slightly raised, so I can type a little bit faster, and you don't have to worry about charging it. Next is my mouse recommendation. I've spent a few years using every type of mouse, including the Apple Magic Mouse, the Magic Trackpad, a gaming mouse, and even the infamous trackball mouse that you see in Pro Tools Studios. And after extensively using each mouse, learning the shortcuts, and spending time testing, I've concluded that my favorite mouse is the gaming mouse. And my reasons for using a gaming mouse comes down to speed and comfort. I was always using my Apple mouse and trackpad at maximum speed, but still felt like it moved too slow, even with the mouse settings all the way up. With the gaming mouse, I can click this little button on top to increase the speed sensitivity beyond the Mac OS maximum. This is particularly useful when working with high-resolution displays because your mouse has a lot more pixels to travel across. Speaking of displays, the most important accessory in my home studio is the monitor. And I'm not talking about speakers. I'm talking about the screen that you're looking at all day long. If you purely do music production and don't create content or tutorials, you can probably save some money at this step and use any affordable 4K HDMI display that supports 60 frames per second. Every modern Mac has an HDMI port that works with any monitor. However, if you make video content or do a lot of screen recordings like I do, you want to think a little more seriously about your display choices. And if you produce video content for a living, you definitely want to take your display choices seriously. This is the 27-inch 5K Apple Studio display, and it's easily one of the best displays for any home studio. Having 5K Retina display means your software will look sharper and more color accurate than using a generic brand display. I've been using LG TVs for 10 years, but as soon as I saw the difference in using Apple Studio display, I could clearly see why it's more premium. Not only is the clarity and color science next level, but the connectivity is way smarter than generic HDMI. It connects to your Mac with a single Thunderbolt cable, which conveniently powers your laptop and allows you to ditch the charger. And on the back, it offers 3 USB-C ports, which basically means you're getting a hub, charger, and a display all in one device. If you're tall, you may want to consider an adjustable stand or the Visa mount option. But if you're not tall, you'll find the basic stand to be the perfect height. This basic stand can tilt adjust, but it doesn't move up and down. If you work around studio lighting or windows with sunlight, you may want to consider the nano texture glass as it diffuses harsh glares. But like I said, if you purely make music and you don't need to color correct footage or make content, you can absolutely get by with any brand computer monitor from the past 5 years. But when I was using cheaper monitors, I would always open up my MacBook Pro to double check my colors on the Retina display before uploading every video. Retina displays are the video equivalent to having a good pair of speakers for mixing. You want to trust what you hear making music and trust what you see coloring videos. Plus, the screen recordings in my tutorials are that much sharper now that I've upgraded from 4K to 5K. This actually makes a big difference when you're editing and zooming in to show those tiny details and controls in your software. Plus, a majorly overlooked Apple Studio display feature is the built-in webcam, which is now my go-to device for conference calls and meetings. The final accessories that you need as a creative are external SSDs and external hard drives. I've had nothing but perfect results with my SanDisk Extreme 4TB SSD, and I've also gotten great use out of my Samsung T7 SSDs. You can choose whichever brand seems better to you, but the point of an SSD is to hold all of your current projects and works in progress. Once a project is finalized, I like to dump it onto a larger, slower, cheaper hard drive, like this 20TB backup drive. Or recently, I wirelessly transfer everything to store on my 100TB Synology, which should last me about 4 to 5 years of YouTube productions. But even if you only make music, having external drives are an excellent way to store instrument libraries, sample packs, or projects, and you'll definitely be needing some eventually, regardless of which Mac or specs you choose. So that completes my list of Mac specs, computer option recommendations, and accessories. The only question left to answer is which Mac would I choose if I could only have one? So if I had to narrow down all 4 choices and pick one computer for everything, I would pick, drumroll please, the M4 Max Mac Studio. It's got all the power, ports, and specs that I need to push the limits as a music and video creator. Plus 99% of the work that I do is here in my home studio. So portability isn't a significant consideration for my needs. I would rather have the biggest, beefiest computer here in my home studio, if you know what I mean. The options we have available today are all so insanely good that you literally can't go wrong with any Mac for your creative journey. Of course, every creator's needs and path is slightly different, so share your story in the comments below on what Mac has been working in your home studio. And don't forget to check out all the links in the description below of all the products and accessories featured in today's video, plus my collection of stock plugin vocal templates for every popular DAW, serum presets, vocal sample packs, and more at IamKarra.com. And I'll catch you guys next time in another video.